Okay, and we are live and in session once again. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the third episode of the Frustrated Healer podcast. And as you've noticed, we got a couple of upgrades in here. Yeah. So, I made this myself. You will notice a few elements here and there. We now have a proper background for the podcast, and I'm pretty happy with how it turned out, honestly. Um, you guys are gonna be up here as like my little monitor here. You guys are my guests, and of course a little shelf with all the little bits and bobs that we have and whatnot. Of course, the picture of the Oshi on the on the rightmost. So it was a pretty fun experience making this. I spent like a few hours yesterday fumbling around with some things that just didn't work, but that's just the nature of 3D art. So thankfully, I managed to make it work, and now we're here. Let me just give you a quick shout out to the early birds in the chat. We got Victor, Kenzo, Kat, the good bot. Yeah. Oh, and the good bot. You can talk about what you mentioned on Discord. Yeah. Okay. So, today, we are going to be talking about fighting games. No? Particularly, accessibility options in fighting games. Now, why did I decide to even talk about a topic like this? Well, it's a bit of I guess a hot topic that's being talked about here and there, particularly with the modern controls introduced in Street Fighter 6. They let you have a taste of what that's like through the demo, no? And it just made me think about how these accessibility options, how maybe reducing the execution barrier and the difficulty in playing fighting games could actually be one of the big things to help it out too. That in turn with Idol Showdown, something. Honestly, the fan game that we didn't think would blow up the way that it did, just seeing it getting support from the FGC was a pretty surreal experience. And, a lot of people who are way more qualified than I am to talk about this, of course, have already, have mentioned it as well. So what you're going to get from me is something more of a slightly more casual perspective. Now, I'm not a total beginner at fighting games, but neither am I anywhere near the level of the FGC people who have been playing these games for years upon years and have really overcome that skill that execution barrier, no? And so to how do I say this? So to lay it all out first, let's put it this way. Arcade games, during the time, the era of the arcade game, fighting games were really some of the most popular features in the arcades back in the 90s, in that scene, no? I unfortunately was not able to participate very much in the arcade scene because we didn't really have one back home. If anything, I was considerably the most hardcore gamer across all my friends, no? So that did provide a little bit of a tough time growing up because I really wanted to be part of it, but it's like didn't have the right people to play with, and whenever I would try to go to the arcades and it would be an arcade stick, I can't operate those things to save my life. I just never got to grips with the arcade stick. Like the buttons were fine, but the movement through the joystick always made me always had me fumbling the moves around. Like what I wanted to do would just was just not happening, no? And this was this was true until the time when, we started transitioning to more home console games, no, PCs and whatnot. And just over time, because of how niche of a genre it is, the whole fighting game scene really kind of faded into the background. It became very much niche later on, no? And like we said, it's probably because it's also the most notoriously difficult genre of game out there. Like, it's not like a shooter where you just aim the cursor with your mouse and click to shoot. No? Here, there are so many options and possibilities for you to do in every match, with across every game, with whatever opponent you're up against. And each match is really a test, no? And if you're a beginner, there's also, if you go onto YouTube, you look up a lot of fighting game stuff, like how to get into it. You're gonna be, you're gonna encounter a ton of jargon that's going to be very confusing for newbies. And, as flashy as fighting games can be, it's really not just all about doing your cool moves and whatnot. Because if you just try to do cool moves, you're gonna get destroyed by anyone with with a modicum of skill. And I understand how that can be an immensely frustrating experience, especially as a newbie and you just want to try to get into these games. It is just constantly getting your ass kicked and just, constantly losing with each match, in and out, in and out. And it's an exhausting experience. It can be demotivating. It can be a little bit, it can make you lose motivation to keep trying, because it's like, how do you even match up, no, with these people who've been playing for way, way longer than you have? How do you bridge that skill gap, no? And that's really one of the tough things. Like, even just getting to a point where, like what you guys are saying, even just to get to that point, you do need to learn your options before you proceed. And sometimes for casual gamers, that is a little bit, it's a bit much to ask of them. So that's the reason also why fighting games are seen as a very hardcore genre of fighting games. Because let me put it this way, no? Let's take Street Fighter for example. So let's keep it simple for now, no? You have you have a 2D game, and you start one end, your opponent starts on the other end. And just at the start of the round, there are so many options for you to make, no? There's a lot of flowcharting and situational awareness. And a lot of this stuff only comes from continuous playing and familiarity with the game, no? For example, when you start out, let's say you're using a let's say, I was about to say you're using a Shoto, but for the sake of ease of use here, let's just say you're using Ryu. And the opening of the round. Okay, so you decide, all right, I'm going to jump in and I'm going to try to rush them down. Now, the other person has also their game plan at the start of the round, and they're either going to try their tactic, or they're going to anticipate what you're about to do. So there's that. There's that aspect alone. So if the guy jumps, what are you going to do? If the guy is crouching, what are you going to do? The problem is, even if you know what to do, the pace of a fighting game is usually so freaking fast that it's hard to nail it down. You will inevitably guess here and there. So there's a lot of reaction speed, there's a lot of muscle memory, there's a lot of knowing the cues on knowing the cues. In fact, one of the things that I remember hearing when we were just taught when I was looking up, before how to get better at fighting games, how to get, to do this and that. And the funny thing is they were saying you keep your eye on your opponent more than your own character, because that's how you get to see, the giveaways. Like if you're using a slower attack, no? If you're using a slower attack, you keep your eye on your opponent and you can see that they're about to do that attack that's going to hit you high up. So you're going to crouch low in order to dodge that. And then what's your response going to be next? And how are they going to respond in turn? So it's really a lot of back and forth. And honestly, that's part of the appeal of video games, of those video games as well, fighting games in particular. Personally, for me, I enjoy that it is perhaps one of the most skill-based genres out there. As someone who's not the biggest fan of RNG or luck in games, a lot of stuff being put up to chance, especially in skill-based games, that's not quite where that's not quite I don't how do you call it? That's not the kind of thing that I find fun in a video game. No, like if it's a skill-based competition, I've always been a firm believer, like whoever's the most skilled player deserves to win. And that's the kind of appeal that fighting games have to me. It's one-on-one. There are no teammates to blame. Why do you think I'm called the frustrated healer? What do you think kind of role did I get stuck with all those hours playing League of Legends? All those hours playing Heroes of the Storm and Dota. Why do you think I'm called the frustrated healer? About a couple people coming in too in the chat. You guys like the background? Very good. Very good, very good. So yeah, when those things happen, it's like, yeah, there are a lot of things to blame. Like you're blaming your team for not working with you. You're blaming the enemy. Maybe they're just too skilled. You're blaming all this and that. But with a fighting game, there's no excuses. It's you and me. Mano a mano. 1v1 me, bro. It is the pinnacle of 1v1 me, bro. And honestly, there is that feeling, a similar feeling of satisfaction to Dark Souls, in that not using the difficulty. No, we're not that creatively bankrupt around here. In that every single game that's difficult will be immediately described as Dark Souls-esque. No. That's not what I'm talking about here. It's more that in Dark Souls, one of the biggest appeals of the game is that when the whole combat system, when the whole gameplay system clicks, when it finally clicks, it feels incredible. Because Dark Souls is not a game that you play like any other action game. You don't play it like any other skill-based game. And that's very much the same philosophy with fighting games. That's why I believe the channel was Core A Gaming chat that was saying that they had a whole video about why button mashing doesn't work. At the very low skill level, it might, if you guys are like of equal level and you're just kind of mashing out the buttons and seeing what works. But at higher levels of gameplay, you will just get annihilated. Because once the person knows what you're doing, like if you're just throwing attacks out randomly, if they know how to counter those, it's going to be very difficult for you to fight back. You need tactics, exactly. So as you guys were saying earlier, it's that there's a general pool of knowledge with fighting games, and then the execution changes with each one, no? And I decided to, for this one, now that we're really getting into a bit of a nitty gritty here, it's going to get a little bit detailed. I decided to show you guys, bring out my controller here so that you guys can see exactly what I mean with, with the movements. No, I am, like I said, I don't use arcade stick. I have a very difficult time with the joystick on that thing, but I find it very easy to use a controller. Now, one of the we're still using the Street Fighter style, arcade game, no? 2D fighters with your character, their character. And one of the most basic, quote unquote, one of the most basic special moves you'd have is the fireball, no? That's the Hadouken for Ryu. And for that, if you guys have a numpad, you can also use this numpad notation. This is what they use to describe special moves. I won't use too much numpad notation because I really want to keep this more accessible and casual for everyone. So essentially, to use a fireball, you have to pull this down, move down, and then swing it. You turn it forward like that. I know the image is mirrored right now. But yeah, when you do, you pull it down, and then here. Yeah, from down to forward. This is what we call the quarter circle forward notion. No? You start from down, and then you turn it this way. And then there's quarter circle back, where you turn it backwards instead. And when you have different attack moves, attack weights, from light, medium, heavy, and each one will correspond to a different power or speed of the special attack being thrown. For example, if you do this, if you do a light fireball, it usually flies slower. Medium flies faster, and you get the gist of it, no? And yes, I know I'm mirrored. It's just for the sake of it, just for the sake of the demonstration, here. You're gonna get the point either way. So with numpad notation, like if you have a numpad on your keyboard, if you have a laptop, or if you have a laptop with a numpad, or you have a big keyboard, essentially the numpad notation goes 2, 3, 6, like that. This motion rather. That's how you do the basic fireball move, and it's manageable enough to be able to throw those moves out on demand once you get used to the motion, no? But there is one other motion for another kind of special move. Called the Dragon Punch. That is the Shoryuken for Ryu in Street Fighter. And that is done with they call it the Z notion. It is a little bit tough. So let's say you're looking at the numpad notation, and that corresponds to all of these directions too, right? So I know I'm mirrored, so I'm just gonna have to make up for it. This is 2 is down, 3 is diagonal here, 6 is this way. 2, 1, 4, 7, 8, 9, 6, 3, 2, 1. Yeah, that's how the notation works. And there's the kind of the special move that you have in. There's another special move you have. Usually, it's an anti-air kind of move, and that one is a little bit tougher because what you do is you press forward first, then press down, and then diagonal. So on the numpad notation, that is, if you're facing left, you're here. You're on the left and you're facing right, rather. Sorry. You press 6, 2, 3. And that is one of the motions that most beginners will have some difficulty with, because there's a very good chance where you accidentally just press just do the fireball motion, because it's just one button away from doing the fireball motion. And in the middle of a high-paced, fast-paced match, you don't always have the composure to be able to execute the move that you need at the exact time that you need it. No? And that really is another point of difficulty. That is really the execution barrier that we've been talking about for games. You also need to have the right timing because you can't press the directions too fast or else the move won't come out. You also can't press it too slow, otherwise the motion won't register at all, and you would have just used you would have just ended up using a standard attack, no? So what happens here is, for me, that's a reason why I was never personally a big Street Fighter fan, no? Because of all the high level execution that you need to do. And let's say the guy is jumping at you, and what you want to do, of course, is your anti-air attack, your special attack, because that deals more damage, no? And sometimes even if they're jumping at you, you're not always guaranteed to be able to throw out the attack you want at a moment's notice. That really is one of the tougher things about those kinds of games. So it adds to the frustration because, like, I know what I wanted to do. I wanted to do this, and this, but it's just not coming out. And you feel like, oh, it's a skill issue. But that's because it is. Sad to say. But that's just really part of the game, unfortunately. So for me, instead of really spending a lot of time in Street Fighter with all of those, with the directional inputs, what happened instead was I got into Tekken. So the biggest thing with Tekken is that on what do you call it? At a base level, Tekken was easy enough to get into. I'm not saying Tekken is an easy game. Far from it. Has an extremely high skill ceiling. If you've ever seen competition at the highest level, pro level Tekken is on a whole new level of complexity and difficulty. However, if you're just entering it casually, the barrier for entry is a lot lower due to how the moves are done. You rarely need to do those wild directional inputs, and instead you can just the moves there are just a string of commands. Let's say you're going forward, you press X, A, and B, and then that's like a basic 3-hit combo, and it looks good, it's reliable, it's easy enough to execute. Now, what happens here is the key in Tekken, instead of throwing out your special moves and whatnot, it now becomes a matter of seeing which of your moves string together to create those big combos. And it's a lot easier to get to a point where you're pulling out some flashy moves. It feels good, but there are, of course, a lot of other fundamentals in Tekken that you need to get used to before you really become good at the game. But we're just talking at a very base level. For a casual who doesn't really play too many fighting games, you go into Tekken and you look at the move list, the command list. It's not usually very intimidating, which allows people to get into it a lot more. In fact, it's funny that back home, Tekken is practically our national fighting game. There have been a couple of incidents in the past where like we had crowned a new Evo champion. Evo is the biggest fighting game tournament that we have in the world, no? And the world champion at the time was going around places and like fighting people from all these different countries. They go to the Philippines and they they actually lose to local competition. It's happened. It's happened a couple of times now. Usually it's because like, oh my god, there's a pretty big scene back there. Yeah, there is. It is pretty awesome. But we find it fun. We find it fun because it is I don't know, there's something about it that's very satisfying. And even though like if you're just looking at it and there's a big move list on your character, no, you're not actually going to end up using all of those moves because not every single move on that list is really, always going to be useful to you. So sometimes the game plan becomes to just, to memorize a handful of useful moves that can get you going in Tekken, that can, bring the damage, do some tricks on your opponent, and then apart from that, once you get used to it, then come the fundamentals of learning how to do, spacing, making sure that you're just you're just far enough from your opponent that their attacks will miss or whiff is the term that they use. And when they whiff an attack, what's your response to do a whiff punish? No, if they miss an attack, how do you make them pay for it? And that's the kind of that's a philosophy in fighting games that can be used in general, but it's a lot more visible in it's pretty visible in Tekken because there are certain moves that will really leave you open to counterattack if you just throw them out carelessly, So in turn with that, it's funny you guys mention it. You never really got into Tekken, but you did play Soul Calibur for a bit back in college. Now, Soul Calibur is another really, really fun game, honestly. I was a big fan of those two games growing up, Tekken and Soul Calibur. Soul Calibur is a little bit similar to Tekken in that it has somewhat simplified movesets, no? Well, rather, you don't have to do a lot of fancy movements on your directional pad or your analog stick, your joystick, in order to do a lot of the better moves in the game. And the appeal of Soul Calibur was that it was a weapon fighter. And that's not something you see every day. Like everyone was using a different weapon style, and it was just the coolest thing, especially if you were a kid. I grew up playing the very first game in the series called Soul Blade, and localized to be Soul Blade. I believe it was called Soul Edge in other countries. And I don't know, it was just the coolest thing to see so many different weapon styles fighting each other. Samurai Spirits is a good one too. But Samurai Spirits was a bit more of a, I guess where I grew up, it was a bit more of a niche. We played more of Soul Calibur back home. And that one had a lot of focus on the 3D movement. It was an arena fighter. And one of the most unique things is that, I know it's not the only game to do it, but it was unique in that you can win not just by beating your opponent, but by knocking them out of the ring. And some characters had specialized strategies that made them very good at throwing people out of the ring. And that one puts a lot of focus on your positioning, puts a lot of focus on your movement, and it puts a lot of focus into being able to react to your opponent, because you didn't just have high and low attacks. You had vertical and horizontal attacks, which each had their own their own different properties. No? So like the martial art tournament stage in Dragon Ball games. Yes, exactly like that. But this applied for all of the stages in Soul Calibur. Now the funny thing is there are stages there that are like caged. You literally cannot knock your opponent out of the ring if you just want a straight death match. Yeah. And one of the interesting things here is because it focused so much on movement, the options you had were also specialized to react to the opponent's movements. For example, if I was going to do a vertical attack, it hits the area in front of me straight on like this. You can sidestep that and then respond in turn. Otherwise, I can also do a horizontal attack. It can be high or low. But if I do a horizontal attack, that's going to catch you if you're sidestepping. If I do a horizontal attack up here, high up, and you're crouching, that will leave me open to some counter attacks. So it gives you another set of options and situations, flowcharts that you need to get used to, which also did get difficult at very high levels of play. Now, when we're talking about accessibility, the controls in the fighting games, let's first talk about Idol Showdown. In fact, Idol Showdown was the very reason why I decided to talk about this topic, because it was very surprising how they were able to nail down a control style that was easy enough to pick up, even for people who had never played a fighting game before. See, that was the interesting thing, because in as much as there are fighting game fans in the VTuber community, in the Hololive community to be specific, the intersection between the number of fighting game players and the number of Hololive fans is rather small. There aren't that many FGC, or also known as the fighting game community. There aren't too many FGC people in the rabbit hole. So for them to come out with a Hololive fighting game, they had to make sure that, hey, there are a lot of folks in this community that we're appealing to that have probably never even touched a fighting game before. And that was pretty apparent with the streams that we saw of Idol Showdown. There were multiple instances where the girls were playing these games, and of course, chat was backseating them, trying to provide them like all these notations, all these moves, all these tips, and it just ended up kind of overwhelming them. It's the easiest thing for people, for experienced players, to say, "Oh, the numpad is just use the numpad notation. Like the numpad corresponds to your to the directional inputs." But it's really not as intuitive to people who have never even played a fighting game. And to constantly have to refer to it on a numpad can be a little bit jarring. Right? Just do a 2-3-6. Just do a 6-2-3. You're not speaking the same language as they are in that you're not speaking the same language as them, on that level. The problem is the problem is when people tend to force the issue, and they're not really speaking the same language as you, and it just leads to confusion. It leads to frustration, and it helps for them to come to that realization. Like, you can tell them, sure, it's numpad notation. You do this, you do that, and then as they come to terms with it, then they start picking up on your language. Then you can have good communication. No. So what happens is, in Idol Showdown, one of the most interesting mechanics that they decided to use was a special button. You can literally just use a special attack at the press of a button. And instantly, the game changes. You mean I don't need to do quarter circle forward motions anymore? I don't need to do quarter circle back motions anymore? God forbid, I don't even need to do the Z motions anymore. I can just press a button and it will do the move that I want for me. Oh, that suddenly makes it a lot more appealing. That suddenly removes a lot of the execution barrier for the traditional 2D games. And now, the interesting thing is, just because you can throw out special moves on a whim doesn't mean you will automatically win a match. No, it just means it's easier to throw out the special moves that you want. But there are still a lot of fundamentals that you need to get used to. Like, for example, like we were saying earlier, spacing, reaction time, getting used to the situations, being able to read your opponent, even guessing your opponent. Sometimes there are moves that are just impossible to react to, so you have to just guess how to, I'm going to throw this out. It's a safe move. It's a pretty safe move. That's what you usually call a poke. Huh? It keeps the opponent at a decent distance, and I'm pretty safe throwing it out there. It's a good way to gauge your opponent. It's kind of like in boxing, how you usually use a jab to I usually use a quick jab to gauge your opponent, to see how they'll react, to see how, kind of get a feel for the match. And what happens now is you can focus now on learning the fundamentals, because the execution barrier has just been reduced. It's not like fighting games are still not easy, not by any means. But now it's a lot more manageable to be able to just use a button to use the special move that you wanted. The person jumped up. Remember the example we used earlier? The person's jumping at you. You have to do the anti-air special move. That. Instead of that, you just press your special button with a different direction. And then you're just going to throw out that anti-air exactly how you want it to. No execution barrier, a lot less human error. And that makes the experience a lot more fun. Honestly. And I don't know, I feel like the whole thing with Idol Showdown too, they have a very simplified combo structure in that you can just string together, go from, essentially your attacks go from lightest to heaviest. So you hit them with the light attack, it'll combo into your medium attack, it'll combo into your heavy attack, and then it can combo into a launcher. It's called a launcher because you hit the opponent and they'll go up in the air. And now you can hit them with an air combo if you have access to that, or you can hit them with other special attacks while they're in the air. So it opens a lot more options to you. And sometimes you launch them and then you throw a special move. All you need to do is a press of a button, and it's so much easier to do. And on the note of modern controls, I'll be going back and forth with Idol Showdown and Street Fighter 6 here. So Street Fighter 6 had the demo come out about, a few weeks ago? And it was pretty fun. First off, the presentation is fan-friggin-tastic. They knew what they were doing. They were trying to appeal. You can see that they were trying to appeal a lot more to casuals to come back to the game and decide and try to check it out. Because for the longest time, like I had absolutely zero interest in Street Fighter 5. I played 4, but I didn't really have any interest in 5. But 6 is practically a must-buy for me at this point. And one of the biggest things that they let you experience in the demo was the use of the modern controls. And one of the greatest things about the modern controls is it's similar to what they implemented in Idol Showdown. No? What they did in Street Fighter is they now also presented to you a special button. No longer do you need to do those directional inputs. You can throw out a move at the press of a button. You can just do it at the press of a button. So the cool thing is, okay. So the cool thing is with the way it plays now with Street Fighter 6. First off, the way that the combos and the hits work, there is some serious impact behind those moves, and it feels good to play. To me, just personally, it just feels great to play. And to be able to throw out all the special moves I want very simply feels good. But there is also a small cost to pay. Well, probably a big cost for more experienced players, no? But what they did in Street Fighter is that Street Fighter is a 6-button fighter. What that means is you have 3 punch buttons and 3 kick buttons. And each of these buttons, like you have a light punch, a medium punch, heavy punch, light kick, medium kick, heavy kick. Each one corresponds to a different move. And each button will also correspond to a different power or speed of the special move that you're going to throw out, no? But with the modern controls, you're sacrificing a couple of buttons. You're losing options. You're losing a couple of options that maybe some people on the pro level would find a bit would find very dangerous to lose. No, what'll happen is, let's say, what happens there is like you've been reduced to a like what is it, a 4-button fighter at this point, where you just have, instead of light punch, light kick, light medium punch, medium kick, etc., etc. What you now have is light attack, medium attack, heavy attack, and then special. It's been made a lot simpler, but that also means you have less options. You don't usually decide if your button is usually already predetermined for you. Like your heavy attack may just be the heavy kick. So if you want to do the heavy punch, well, you may have just lost that button. For you might have lost that button if you decide to do modern controls. But it's funny. It's funny that when I was looking up a lot of videos, a lot of material, I was just looking up how people felt about the whole feel of the game. So I was looking up videos from Daigo Mehara and Justin Wong, and there was some concern over modern controls. They were wondering, will modern controls be able to bridge the gap, between that, sorry, let me reconstruct that sentence. If modern controls are able to get rid of that execution barrier, will the removal of that execution barrier be able to bridge the gap in skill between lower skilled players and maybe higher skilled players? In my opinion, not quite. Like what I was saying earlier, even in Idol Showdown, no? Your fundamentals are still incredibly important. Just because you can now throw your special moves willy-nilly doesn't automatically mean that you're gonna win more matches. If anything, if you end up just spamming special moves over and over again, you're gonna get annihilated. It is absolutely not a guarantee that you will win more matches, or that you will, that you will be able to become a pro in like 2 weeks. No, no. Fighting games still require a lot of time and effort to familiarize yourself with all these situations and all of these options that you have. No. So what happens now when you go back to something like Idol Showdown? Well, what about the people who still prefer traditional directional inputs? Well, what happens now is that while you have the option to just use the one button specials, you also have the option to to do traditional execution, and you're rewarded for it with super chat meter in that game, which then allows you to implement to implement some super moves, and then implement some cancels. What a cancel means is that, let's say I throw a fireball, and then right after that I decide to throw a dragon punch. I do my anti-air move, and it lets me combo those two, string those two things together. Yeah. Probably gonna be a lot less frustrating for new players. Yeah. If anything, just that structure of gameplay is going to reduce the frustration in terms of wanting to do the moves that you wanted. In fact, what happens now is you can really just focus more on the aspects of the game that will make you better. In fact, some people were even proposing that perhaps modern controls could be the gateway for someone to learn the game enough and then go and use classic controls. I mean, when I was playing the Street Fighter demo, I really tried the modern controls and spent a lot of time with it. And I will say, it feels great. It really does feel good to play with that option, because I don't have to worry about making a wrong input on my directions and then the wrong move comes out. When it feels bad. It feels really bad, because let's say you've familiarized yourself with the situation. The guy jumps at you and you're supposed to respond with an anti-air. You're supposed to respond with an anti-air, and that's exactly what you're trying to do, and it doesn't come out. And it's just very, very annoying. So at least now your answer is practically guaranteed, for lack of a better term. When you see them doing that move, hit them with the dragon punch with an uppercut, and immediately you have the momentum on your side. Now your turn to attack, their turn to react to you. And it just feels good. Of course, like what we were saying earlier, it feels like a super high-paced chess match. So one of the excuse me, chat. So what happens now? What happens now with Street Fighter 6? One of the funniest little memes that I heard is that people are genuinely concerned about modern control Zangief. Now, why is that meme going around, chat? Why is the whole meme about modern control Zangief going around? Well, let me put it this way. There are multiple types of characters. Let's use Idol Showdown to make it easier. Coco in Idol Showdown is what we call a grappler. What that means is her gameplay, her game plan is all about doing command grabs. What that means is your special moves will end up with instead of throwing projectile or something like that, if you throw a special move, it's going to lead to a throw, a very strong throw in many cases. Now, what makes it difficult, especially in Street Fighter, is that Zangief is pretty infamous for having what we call a freaking 360 input motion. As in, you literally turn the analog stick or the joystick, you go 360 degrees. You go all the way around and then press a button in order to do a grab that will deal a ton of damage to your opponent. Now, we don't know how modern controls will translate with Zangief, because it would feel like you're doing broken Street Fighter 2 AI combos with that. Where they could input the whole 360 grab motion with the button in like a fraction of a second. Essentially, it's inputting, it's doing the motions, doing the inputs at impossibly fast times that, you know, humans could not match. So people are wondering, they're concerned, well, are you going to give that kind of power to the players? Are you going to let them do one frame 360 grabs? And it seems like there was some awareness behind that, and they were saying that no, we're not giving that level of power, like, you know, AI brokenness, AI cheapness to the players, but it still makes me concerned. It still makes me wonder how they're going to implement this with oh, hello Nemo. It still makes me wonder how they're going to implement this with Zangief and a lot of other, you know, characters with command grabs. What? You interested in fighting games too? Please, no, don't go on the keyboard. Don't go on the keyboard. Don't want to cancel my stream. You might press the wrong button again. Huh? He's looking so much better now. He's looking so much better, aren't you? Yeah. So, if anything, chat, like, this is really the best time to be a fighting game fan in the modern era. Honestly, there has been a lot of attention. There has been a lot of attention placed on fighting games, and it kind of feels like a renaissance of sorts, because for a while, you know, fighting games were, like I was saying, in the arcade eras, there were so many fighting games around, and everyone was playing it. Everyone was playing it. And now it's like, oh yeah, there are so many other games out there, so many other options, and fighting games have really faded into the background. But now, like you guys were saying too, like, we have Street Fighter 6 coming up very soon. We have Idol Showdown, which came out at the perfect time. Came out right between the release date of the right after the demo of Street Fighter 6, and in between, it came in that gap. The release date of Street Fighter 6, the release date of Street Fighter 6 is over here in June, and then early on in May we got the demo, and right in the middle of May we got Idol Showdown, which was great. And then we've been also getting a lot of trailers for Tekken 8. There has been some we're definitely going to be looking up the stuff about Project L too. If you guys don't know that, that is the League of Legends themed fighting game, which is looking like it's going to be another really fun fighter too. It's like something I would love to check out as well. Though for that one, we definitely don't have any release dates or anything like that yet. It's still very much up in the air. It's still up in the future, no? So I wonder if you guys played it yourselves, no? How do you find the feel of how do you guys find the feel of Idol Showdown? And maybe if you've tried the Street Fighter 6 demo, if you've tried modern controls, how does it feel good to play on it? Yeah. We have KOF 15. We have Samurai Spirits. We have the Mortal Kombat. Yeah, we have the totally not confusingly named Mortal Kombat 1. And of course, we have more niche games too. More of the more quiet fighters in the community that a select number of people really, really love. Unfortunately for me, it's like I've only ever followed maybe like 2 or 3 fighting games. Like I was saying earlier, like with Tekken, Street Fighter, just because I just want to know what happens there. I'm a very casual fan of King of Fighters. So yeah, it's kind of like Tekken, Street Fighter, Soul Calibur. Those are my big 3, the ones that I play the most. Though, Nemo, are you okay? You only play you only like Mortal Kombat for the story. To be fair, Mortal Kombat story though, their campaign is pretty dang good. The production values that they have for the cinematics is really, really high. You can't really go wrong with them in that regard, no? Nemo! Oh no, please don't press anything. Please don't drink from my cup either. Oh no. No. Get down from there. Please get down from there. Okay. There you go. Sorry about that, chat. This little guy. He's just a little guy. Okie dokie. So, the PH on-site arcade scene was limited to Street Fighter, King of Fighters, Tekken, Soul Calibur, Marvel vs. Capcom, yeah, and a few choice selections. You like playing Fubuki and Idol Showdown, the RNG is fun to you. Definitely trying King of Fighters R2 in the simple button mode. But yeah, I'm also glad that they've recognized that a lot of people, I feel like a lot of people, casuals especially, would be definitely more interested in picking up fighting games if the execution barrier was reduced. And, you know, just because you reduce the execution barrier doesn't mean that people are going to become pros overnight. Like, people who have developed their skills, the pros who have developed their skills and fundamentals over how many years will still easily have the advantage over any casual who just learned how to, you know, run a basic combo after an hour or so in the training mode. So, if anything, it's just great to have these options, and it just opens up the genre to all sorts of people, whether you're casual, hardcore, somewhere in between, right? And if anything, it's just fun to be able to enjoy the games you want. And if the execution barrier was the thing that was stopping you from being able to enjoy it, well, having that removed definitely adds to the fun of it, no? All right, you guys. So I think that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for the active participation in the chat. Thank you for hanging out here. I hope you enjoyed this discussion. With that, I would say our session is adjourned. Join us next week, where the topic is going to be all about RNG, the most notorious mechanic that equalizes everyone whether they want it or not, huh? We'll talk about that next week. All right, chat. I'll see you guys next time. I will see you guys tomorrow for the Hololive Weekly Roundup. Okay? And with that, this is Senator War Chief signing out. Take care, you guys. Otsu Sen.